Okay, in this video, let's talk about the term helicopter parents and how that relates to an anxious child.
Yeah.
And today we have with us Margot Bean. She's an LCSW with Overcomers Counseling, and she's a licensed clinical social worker. So, Margot, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks for coming on. And so just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am, like Garrett said, a licensed clinical social worker. I have been working in the field with children, adolescents, families for 20 plus years. And yeah.
That sounds like you probably have quite a bit of experience
working
with children and families.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, let's get right to the topic. And again, we're talking about helicopter parents. So let's define it real quick. What is a helicopter parent?
Well, I did a little research. A helicopter parent is somewhat of a new phenomenon that happened right after 9/11. If you look back prior to that, parenting during World War I and II, in Korea, in Vietnam, was pretty much hands off. So when this phenomena that happened to our country, when we were shocked into sort of the fear factor, they noticed that parents were hovering, hence why they call it helicopter parenting, where they're hovering on every aspect of the kid's life: social, emotional, food, who they hang with. I mean, I never in my life recall having my parents make a play date. I mean, so that phenomenon started where parents were sort of taking over the things that children just naturally learn. The helicopter thing, sort of hovering around, looking at everything they're doing.
Sure. So how does being a helicopter parent become a bad or good thing for an anxious child?
So you have two kind of schools of thought, some nature and nurture. So is the child born with similar DNA that the parents have? And if you're an anxious human, does your child inherit some of that, right? And then there's the nature of where you grow up, who your social circle is, schooling, and all that. So sometimes it can be useful to help our kids to show them how we cope, right?
Sure.
Because they're watching us. They see how we handle stress or anxiety, right? And then if you're an adult that doesn't really deal with it well, your kid could pick up those traits for sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Is it a good thing that they see us cope with anxiety and stress? Absolutely. Is it a crossing of the line when we force our criteria, so to speak, on them? Like, you need to calm down and here's how you do it. I think some of it has to be learned. It has to be modeled, and children usually find their way.
Modeled through the parents, and the parents obviously being the number one, most of the time, number one influence.
Well, yeah, because we're their first social circle, right? The family is the first social circle in a child's life. And then we introduce them to preschool, and then they can see other kids, right? And as schooling goes on, they get more of a bigger circle of how does my teacher do it when she gets stressed? So, yeah.
And so if I can allow them to experience it on their own, that only helps them in the days to come.
Correct.
And so therefore, sometimes being a helicopter parent, even though I may have the best intentions, obviously I could set them up for failure down the road if I do it too much, too often. And
basically
don't allow them to grow up.
Well, yeah, think about the time when you taught your children, or when I was teaching my kids how to tie their shoe. You showed them a couple times, and the different tricks, and then you had to let them do it on their own. right? You, even with the frustration level, or you kind of have to back off. So although helicopter in the broader sense is an okay to show our kids, but it's when to know to back off and let them learn.
So when do I know, or when do we know? Always a fine line, probably. That's the $1 million question.
Yeah, that is. And so you look at the developmental stages of children, right? And so maybe you have let's just use the shoe tying thing, but that's not, you've got a kid who's 10 and hasn't learned yet. That's kind of, you either missed the developmental mark, they may have some issues going on. So I guess shoe tying isn't really the best, but if you've got a child who's super anxious about going to kindergarten, you give, what I always tell parents, give them the vocabulary. Tell them, I know you're scared. I know you've got butterflies in your belly and you feel a little dizzy. I mean, just help them create it. So when do we miss the mark? When the anxiety becomes crippling to the child. When you see like, oh, Johnny isn't learning this, and that's when you ask teachers and you ask other parents, and generally they can get caught up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Good. So if I'm a parent that has, and I want to change my parenting style, what steps can I take, or what can I do to change my parenting style?
Well, you look at the kid as in the whole picture, right? So children have a social circle, they have their family, they have friends, emotional regulation, physical growth, and you look and you kind of take an honest appraisal of, where am I too much in this? Where am I too heavy? Where am I pushing or not pushing enough to grow this kid into we all want relatively functioning human adults by the time, a certain age, right? Which keeps going further and further into adulthood. But, so looking at it. And so if you say, you know what, I emotionally rescue my kid way too many times, it's just a simple tool of backing off and saying, give them, I always tell parents, like I said earlier, give them the words that they need. Give them the vocabulary. We just assume they know that those butterflies in your stomach and the dizziness could be anxiety or could be hunger. But if we help them, I always tell stories around it.
Yeah. Educate them, train them to fill in the sentences of what they're feeling.
Yeah. Tell us what you're feeling. There is nothing better in the whole world when a kid can come to me and tell me what he's experiencing and where he's feeling it.
Yeah.
In his body. And then I know, wow, parents gave him a vocabulary or kind of showed him.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. And
simple.
What's that again?
Backing away from changing a parenting style could be just one little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from what I'm hearing is that maybe some of my helicopter parenting style is really related to my own anxiety of letting my kid grow up and letting him experience things on his own. And I'm too afraid or fearful that they're going to go through those things. So I'm going to be there.
Yes. 100%, Garrett. Yeah. I mean, not most of the time when I get a parent coming to us and saying, what's going on here, you find that they're just as anxious about making friends, about social scenes, and sort of, so the whole family can relearn this skill. Whole family can relearn it.
Well, so do you have any examples or a case study that we can share with our audience?
Well, I will tell you about this second grade little girl who moved in the middle of the year, right on target, developmentally moving along on her own path. They moved in the middle of the year, and the little girl was super introverted and shy, and it was hard for her, starting school in January with a group of kids that probably went to kindergarten together. So her anxiety level about going to school was really high. And so mom interjected and decided she would go make all these new friends for her. So she got a parent list and went down the list and called and made play dates and get-togethers. And long story short, by the time the kid came to my office, she was pretty anxious. She was pretty anxious because she wasn't allowed to utilize her own skill for making friends. The mom kind of interjected herself into, I'll make the friends for you.
Right.
Come to find out, the mom, she was a very different personality style than her own child. Mm-hmm. She was extroverted. She wondered why her kid couldn't get it. But when I kind of told mom to back off, she made her own friends. And she had her,
prepared her way better. And
yes.
Because we know as they go through school, it's only going to get harder. Middle school and high school and college and whatnot. So preparing them at a young age and backing off at a younger age.
Yes. Yeah. Telling the mom to give her a vocabulary. I know you're afraid to meet these new kids. It's okay to show our children how you can introduce them, find something in common together. Those kind of tools are good. It's when you start picking the phone up and making things happen for them.
Yeah. Sure.
That was just one of many.
One of many, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's great. I think that's a great overview of helicopter parents and how that can breed anxiety, throughout our children's lives. So thank you, Margot, for jumping on here, spending a little bit of time, and
Garrett.
Hopefully we'll see you on next time.